Am I the antagonist for being mad at my family for allowing my brother to invite his girlfriend's mom and grandmother to our vow renewal? My wife, 30 years old, and I, 35 years old, are approaching our 10-year wedding anniversary. To make it special, we wanted to rent a large Airbnb in Florida and have a vow renewal ceremony. We invited immediate family and close friends who have been supportive throughout our journey or whom we wanted to grow closer to. All of us stayed together in the Airbnb. It's important to note that my family used to be very Catholic before our wedding. I'm the oldest of 7 siblings. However, when my wife and I got married, they didn't attend the wedding. They claimed it was immoral because we didn't get married in the Catholic Church, or that we weren't mature enough. They couldn't make up their minds about the reason. This marked the beginning of a 10-year roller coaster ride in trying to rebuild a relationship with them. For instance, despite their absence at our wedding, we decided to show up for family Christmas that year, trying to be the bigger people. However, we were thrown out with them claiming that we had hurt them. There are many more instances between my family and my wife, but it would take too long to recount. Suffice it to say that my family never really made my wife feel welcome. Things with my family started off on a bad note at the Airbnb. My brother, let's call him Bob, asked us as we were all arriving if his girlfriend, let's call her Sarah, could invite her mom and grandmother, who live about an hour away from the Airbnb. We politely declined, expressing that we wanted to keep the guest list limited to the people we had invited. Later, we found out that they wanted to invite them because they were too busy to come down and because the grandmother was very sick. Bob then asked if they could have a gender reveal party, Sarah was pregnant at the time, during our stay, explaining that it would be difficult to gather our large family together at another time. Given that the ceremony was on Saturday and most guests were arriving over the next couple of days, we agreed that they could do something small. And that's when the drama unfolded. Sarah was upset that we used the word simple, arguing that our baby isn't simple. She also didn't appreciate that we didn't allow her mom and grandmother to come. My wife attempted to talk to her, hoping to make her understand our perspective, but Sarah shut her down immediately. Several other incidents of drama occurred, but the breaking point was when, after our ceremony, Bob drove off to bring Sarah's mom and grandmother to the Airbnb. My mom knew about it, and even told us that she didn't stop him because we had our day. This infuriated my wife and me. We left the Airbnb without saying goodbye to my family and haven't had much communication with them except for expressing our anger through text messages. Am I the jerk in this situation? You and your wife planned a special and intimate vow renewal ceremony for your 10-year wedding anniversary, inviting immediate family and close friends. It is entirely reasonable for you to want to keep the guest list to those who you personally invited. Your brother's request to bring his girlfriend's mother and grandmother, despite your polite rejection, shows a lack of respect for your wishes and boundaries. It is unfortunate that your mother enabled this behavior by not telling him no and dismissing your concerns by saying we had our day. This disregard for your feelings and the disrespect shown towards your wife is concerning. You have made efforts throughout the years to rebuild a relationship with your family, despite their previous rejection of your marriage. It is understandable that their continued lack of consideration and the drama caused by Bob and Sarah would be frustrating and hurtful. Leaving the Airbnb and not saying goodbye to your family may have been an emotional reaction in the heat of the moment, but it is important to address the issues calmly and assertively. Texting them about your frustrations is a step in the right direction. Open and honest communication about your feelings and boundaries is necessary for healthy relationships. Overall, you and your wife deserve to have your special day respected and honored. It is important for your family to understand and respect your boundaries, as well as acknowledge the hurt they have caused over the years. Am I the antagonist for kicking my husband out of the house for repeatedly arguing in front of my family about whether or not a certain website is a cesspool? My husband and I are both argumentative people who have assertive personalities. I'm a lawyer, and he's retired military. We argue frequently about facts or politics, but these arguments are usually good-natured and humorous. However, I try not to engage in these discussions when we're socializing or at family events, as it is not pleasant for others to witness another couple arguing. Almost a year ago, we hosted 2 of my older relatives at our house for a few days. All was well, until the topic of social media came up at dinner. I mentioned that Twitter can be a negative environment, filled with hostility. My husband disagreed and initiated an argument about it. As the argument escalated, he became angry. It was evident that our guests were feeling uncomfortable and remained quiet. Suddenly, in a fit of anger, he declared that the conversation was over, got up, and left the room abruptly. I was left in an awkward silence and had to apologize to my relatives. After my relatives left, I expressed my distress to my husband. I told him how upset I was, explaining that he made us look like a couple of crazies arguing over something so trivial and that his behavior was not appropriate when we had guests. He apologized, assured me that it wouldn't happen again, and even admitted that Twitter was indeed terrible, questioning why he had argued about it. 6 months later, we were visiting another relative when he repeated the same behavior. This time it was about the same topic. I'm not sure how it came up, but he angrily argued about it, making the atmosphere tense and uncomfortable. Yet again, I was extremely upset. He apologized once more, promising that it wouldn't happen again. Around a month ago, he brought up on his own accord that he was contemplating deleting Twitter due to its toxic nature. Then at the Thanksgiving dinner hosted by my cousin yesterday, he did it again. While we were at the table engaged in a pleasant conversation, my brother mentioned that after the initial argument where my husband stormed out of the room, it had deeply concerned my older relative, to the point where she had raised concerns about our marriage to my family. As a result, the topic of Twitter was brought up again. And once again, my husband started arguing about it aggressively, creating an uncomfortable and silent atmosphere. Fed up, I finally confronted him, saying, "Are you seriously going to deny our previous conversation on this topic? Didn't you just tell me you were considering quitting Twitter because it's such a negative environment?" In response, he said, not exactly in those words. I was furious that he had repeated this behavior, and we didn't speak on the ride home or for the rest of the night. Today, he hasn't addressed the issue or apologized. I feel like I'm married to someone who enjoys exerting dominance and making a spectacle to show that he's in control, making everyone submit to his unpleasant moods. It's frustrating because he doesn't genuinely disagree with or care about this topic, so I don't understand why he acts this way. Eventually, my frustration reached a boiling point, and I told him that I wanted him to leave the house, referring to it as 3 strikes and you're out. He responded by asking me how long he should stay away, and I replied that I didn't know. He then stormed around angrily, gathered his belongings, and left. Was I in the wrong here? It seems like you have repeatedly expressed your discomfort and frustration with your husband's behavior, but he continues to argue and make things uncomfortable, even in social settings. It is understandable that you reached your limit and asked him to leave. It is important to set boundaries in a relationship and prioritize respectful communication, especially when around guests or family members. Am I the antagonist for kicking out my future in-laws after they lost and almost killed my dog? I am engaged to my fiancée, Meg. I own a large home. Meg spends most of her time at my place, but she still has her own home technically. We are in the process of moving her in with me this fall because my place has more space than hers. As a result, I agreed to host her family, who are from out of town, for Thanksgiving. I want to be honest here. I am not fond of Meg's family. They are extremely conservative, believe in conspiracy theories, and have low-key racist attitudes and traditional gender roles. Meg, on the other hand, is very different from them but remains close with them. Since she hadn't seen them in a year, I agreed to let them stay at my place for the holiday, as I can usually tolerate their presence. On Wednesday morning, Meg's parents arrived and everything was fine. A few hours later, Meg's sister showed up. I have a dog named Lucy. Lucy is my dog, not Meg's or ours. I had Lucy for years before Meg came into the picture, and although Meg isn't a big fan of dogs, she likes Lucy. I was in the bathroom when Meg's sister arrived. Meg's mom called me and said, "I'm going to let Lucy out front to say hi to Meg's sister." I explicitly told her not to do that and that Lucy should be on a leash and I would handle her. I asked for a minute so I could come help, but that didn't happen. I know she heard me because she said okay. However, 2 minutes later, Meg came screaming and said her mom let Lucy outside and she ran away down the street. I rushed out of the house and got into my car to search for her, but I couldn't find her. I drove around my neighborhood and the neighboring areas for the entire day, fearing that she was lost or had been hit by a car. Lucy had my number on her collar, but I was terrified. Meg drove around too, but her parents and sister did nothing. They spent the day alone at my house. I returned home to sleep and resumed the search the next morning, which was Thanksgiving Day. I continued searching, and in the afternoon I received a call that someone had found Lucy. I went to pick her up and she was quite injured. She had several bite marks and was bleeding from multiple places. It seemed like she had been in a fight with a wild animal. I immediately took her to the emergency room, and fortunately they were able to patch her up, and she will recover. However, it took a significant amount of time, so I didn't get back home until Thursday night. Given how exhausted I was, I retreated to my room with Lucy to care for her. Meg's dad knocked on my door and told me to be a man and that Lucy was just a stupid dog, so it shouldn't matter. I told them to leave my home immediately. Meg was upset and mentioned that they had nowhere else to go. I replied that I didn't care, but they couldn't stay at my place. After threatening to call the police, they eventually left. Meg left with them and later texted me, saying it was rude of me to offer them my home and then kick them out, claiming it was an honest mistake. From my perspective, her mom failed to listen to my instructions and Lucy required quiet and alone time to recover. On top of that, I never received an apology. Am I the asshole? You explicitly told Meg's mom not to let Lucy out, but she disregarded your instructions, resulting in Lucy getting injured. It's understandable that you were upset and exhausted from searching for your dog and taking her to the ER. It's within your rights to ask Meg's family to leave when they showed a lack of concern for your dog's well-being and when Meg's father disrespected you and belittled your feelings. You offered your home out of kindness, but they violated your trust and showed a lack of consideration. Apologizing and understanding your perspective should be their priority, not accusing you of being rude. Am I the antagonist for not changing my dog's name when my new neighbor's child had the same name? I am a 36-year-old man, and I am the owner of a mixed-breed dog named Charlotte, who is 6 years old. Charlotte is a combination of Great Pyr and Australian cattle dog. I live in a lower middle-class suburb in an unspecified location within the United States. I have been living here for about a year now, and I let Charlotte out to go to the bathroom around 6 times a day. Our routine is always the same. I open the back door, Charlotte goes outside to pee and patrol the yard. Apparently it's something typical for Great Pyrs, and she usually doesn't come back to the door until I call her name and poke my head out. About a week or two ago, maybe longer if I didn't notice, new neighbors moved into the house across my back alley. I had no intention of interacting with them at all, until today when I was completing the final step of Charlotte's bathroom routine. As usual, I called Charlotte's name and I heard her running up the porch steps. However, this time there was an adult human voice shouting, "Why are you calling my daughter?" At first I thought it might have been my new neighbors having an argument, but a couple of minutes later someone started pounding on my front door. I opened the door to find an angry man who was much bigger than me, glaring at me. He said something like, "Why the hell are you calling my daughter into your house?" I replied, "Your daughter's name is Charlotte?" And he continued to glare at me without saying anything. In response, I said, "Charlotte is my dog's name, dude." And he rolled his eyes and told me to change my dog's name because he didn't want his 2-year-old daughter getting confused and coming into my house. I explained to him that I wouldn't change my dog's name because not only did my dog have the name first, but I also lived here before they moved in. Furthermore, I didn't appreciate strangers making demands of me without even attempting to be polite. In my head, I also wanted to tell him that teaching his child about stranger danger is his responsibility, not mine. He called me stupid and argued that a human child should obviously take priority over a dog when it comes to names. I ended the conversation by shutting the door in his face and continuing to look at him through the peephole for a moment before he walked back to his house. During Charlotte's last bathroom break, I went outside with her and stayed in the yard until she finished her business. However, this man just stood in his yard with his arms crossed, glaring at me the whole time. In summary, I think it's unfair for this father to demand that I change my dog's name just because he chose the same name for his child. However, I am aware that most people consider humans to have priority over dogs in pretty much every aspect. So, am I the asshole in this situation? It's clear that your dog had the name Charlotte first, and you have every right to keep calling her by her name. The neighbor's demand to change your dog's name because he chose the same name for his child is unreasonable and entitled. It's not your responsibility to cater to their desires, and it's up to them to teach their child about stranger danger and to clarify the distinction between a dog and a person. The neighbor's behavior, glares, and confrontations are unjustified and show a lack of respect. Stick to your decision and continue calling your dog by her rightful name. Am I the antagonist for not letting my brother's ex-girlfriend to spend the night at our house? For some context, me, 24-year-old female, and my brother, 31-year-old male, have been living together for a few months. He used to live with his ex-girlfriend, who lived with her mother and her grandmother for a few years, and she has a child. But then she broke up with him. And just at that time, I moved out of my parents' house because I was able to buy a house thanks to my grandma's inheritance. Since my brother had nowhere to go, and he needed to stay in the city because of his work, I told him to move in with me for a few months, since I didn't want to live alone in a new neighborhood where I didn't know anyone. And my brother is more outgoing than me. Here's the thing, and I know many people with older siblings can relate to this. My brother has always taken ownership of my things. If I have something that he likes or needs, he takes it without asking for permission. It has always bothered me since we were kids, and we had awful fights because of it. Recently, he's doing the same thing with the house. He always refers to the house as his and tells everyone that he's the one who bought the house, when it was clearly me. It doesn't bother me that much because we don't really have any friends in common due to our age difference. Now comes the problem. He kept in contact with his ex because he has a really good relationship with her child, but because of that, they were starting to get close again, and she regrets breaking up with him. He tells me he doesn't want to get back together with her, but I know him well enough to realize he's still in love with her. One night I came home from work, and my brother told me that his ex was going to come to the house because she was upset and had a fight with her mother. I told him that she could come, but I didn't want her spending the night. He got upset with me and started questioning the reasons why. I explained to him that I knew that he was still into her, and they would eventually get back together, and if that happened, I knew he would want her to come live in my house with her child, and I didn't want that to happen. He told me I was overreacting and got upset with me. She eventually had to spend the night because there was a storm, and she couldn't go back home. The next day, I told my brother that that was going to be the last time she spends the night at the house, and he got mad at me again. He told me that he was living there too, and he had the right to bring home whoever he wanted. Am I the asshole? You were generous to let your brother stay in your house when he had nowhere else to go. And it's understandable that you have boundaries regarding who spends the night in your own home. It's also reasonable for you to express your concerns about the potential consequences if your brother were to get back together with his ex and have her move into the house with her child. Your brother should respect your wishes and not disregard them, especially considering that he is not contributing financially to the household. It's important to have open communication and establish boundaries in shared living situations. and it's not unreasonable for you to expect your brother to respect those boundaries. Am I the antagonist for telling my friend she might be raising a narcissist? My friend Leah, who is 42 years old and female, has 3 children with her husband Greg, who is 43 years old and male. The 2 older children are well-behaved and pleasant to be around. Then there is Max, who is 5 years old. Max frequently terrorizes his siblings, constantly seeks attention, and Leah encourages this behavior. She refers to him as her favorite last baby boy. Regardless of what he does, Leah dismisses it by saying she cannot be mad at her favorite last baby boy. She makes these comments in front of the older children, which visibly hurts them. I've been observing this situation for the past 2 years, but have refrained from commenting because I believe in respecting others' parenting choices, and I feel it is Greg's responsibility to address the issue. Unfortunately, his attempts have been unsuccessful. During Thanksgiving, we had 23 guests, including Leah's family. While we were all seated at the table, Max began yelling whenever he wasn't the center of attention. He wasn't just speaking loudly, but was screaming at the top of his lungs. He wanted everyone to watch him dance, listen to his story about beating up another child at soccer practice, play with his food, and cried when people didn't acknowledge his demand for everyone to say they were thankful for his cuteness. I looked at Leah and Greg to show them that I was not okay with this behavior. Greg tried to stop Max, but Leah encouraged him and found his behavior amusing and endearing. Other people also attempted to intervene politely and engage in conversations, but my husband felt the need to be more direct and told Max that he could either let others eat and converse peacefully or go eat with the other children at the kids' table, where he was supposed to be in the first place. Leah looked very angry but went with Max to the kids' table. I felt relieved and thought the situation was resolved. She left relatively early with Max, but the rest of the family stayed and everyone seemed content. This morning, Leah called me and expressed her dissatisfaction with our hosting abilities. She stated that this would be the last time they came for Thanksgiving. I want to clarify that aside from this issue, Leah is a successful, intelligent, and enjoyable person whom I genuinely love. However, her reaction was the final straw for me. I remained calm and spoke to her in a professional manner, explaining that I couldn't prioritize Max's needs above everyone else's and that her encouragement of his behavior was not beneficial for his development. I mentioned that it may result in him becoming an unlikable person, or even worse, a narcissist. She abruptly hung up, and I haven't attempted to contact her since. My husband assures me that I did the right thing, as I vocalized what everyone in our friend group has been thinking for years. However, I feel guilty for being so direct. So in this situation, am I the one in the wrong? It seems like you have been observing this situation for a while and have tried to stay out of it. But the behavior of Max has become disruptive and bothersome to not only you, but also to others at the Thanksgiving dinner. It is understandable that you reached a breaking point and spoke up about it. You had initially looked to Leah and Greg to address their parenting approach, but when their attempts failed, you took action to prevent further disruption. While it is unfortunate that Leah reacted negatively and ended the friendship, your intentions were to maintain a pleasant environment for everyone, including the other guests. It is worth noting that the way you addressed the issue might have been direct, but it seems like it was a necessary confrontation after years of tolerating Max's behavior. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.